10-4 drivers, welcome to the Channel 19 Experience Trucker Podcast. This is where the real stories roll, straight from the blacktop.
Breaker 19, villains, you got your ears on. I'm your host, Tony. Welcome to the Trucker Podcast. It's Monday, June 23rd, and it's episode number 18. This week on the podcast, on the bulletin board, our first item has been on a bunch of socials this week. It's a trucking poem written by Sherae Moore, a powerful voice in our industry. She reached out and asked if I would do a reading of her poem, so I'll share that with you today. Also on the bulletin board, we've got another good post on Reddit that got me thinking, and I'm sure it's something we've all thought a time or two about how much we can really take in this business sometimes. And finally, on the pre-trip, we've got a funny little story where real life happened to intersect with some trucking literature I was reading at the same time, and so I'll share that story with you. In the money line, I'm going to resume the story of my trucking journey when I was 21 and I switched from one kind of outlaw to another. In the interview this week, I've got Danger Dave making his return to the show. He's had an adventurous week, to say the least, so he hops on and shares the not so joyful side of being an owner-operator that he had over the last week. Don't forget to hang around after the interview for the post-trip. Let's get this rig rolling. If you're not driving, it's a great time to like, follow, subscribe, and share the podcast with your friends.
Paper breaker 19, can I get a radio check? Pretty quiet out here on Channel 19. There's a plain white rapper taking pictures at the state line. Hit the jake brake quick, we ain't paying no fines. The driver swing into the interstate, body shop south at exit 5. Building trucking ain't the same as it was. We're the last of our kind.
At the Mid-America Truck Show, I had the fortune to meet up with Mike Barber, founder of Truckers Wealth. Both of us have a passion for understanding the uniqueness of truckers and sharing our knowledge wherever we can. Mike is a seasoned financial professional. He has over 20 years of dedicated experience serving the trucking industry. Truckers Wealth has created a specialized financial hub where truckers can receive expert advice and tailored solutions to build wealth, minimize taxes, and secure lifetime income for themselves and their families. Check out his website, truckers-wealth.com, and look forward to seeing him on the program here soon. Grab that safety vest, and let's do the pre-trip. I wanted to start this episode by sharing a powerful poem recently published by Sherae Moore. It's a piece that speaks directly to the heart of every driver out there putting in the miles. Sherae is the founder and president of the She Trucking Foundation, an organization dedicated to helping women build and sustain successful careers in the transportation industry. She's not only a professional driver herself, but also a national advocate, podcast contributor, and trailblazer for women in the field. She serves on the Women of Trucking Advisory Board and is the author of Building a Legacy, a must-read that you can find on Amazon. To learn more about her work and mission, visit shetrucking.com. The poem is titled 10 Hours Down, a heartfelt tribute to all the drivers out there finally finding rest after the long haul. The engine sighs, the brakes release. Another journey finds its peace. From sunup loads to left lane hauls, we've answered freight's relentless calls. We've climbed up mountains, rolled through rain, and backed in tight spaces with tires strained. Picked it up and dropped it right, a working dance from day to night. But now, the key turns off our trucks, the dashboard dims, and silence fills. This truck stop, lit with welcoming grace, becomes our safe, familiar place. A slice of calm on concrete ground, where diesel dreams and rest are found. We park among the sleeping steel and finally start to truly feel. We've earned the pause we know so well, a shower, meal, and a voice back home before we sleep beneath the chrome. So here's to breaks that heal our bones, to midnight stars and ringing phones. We rest, reset, in peace we lay, until the road calls us back another day. That was 10 Hours Down by Sherae Moore. If you'd like to learn more about her work and her mission to support women in trucking, please visit shetrucking.com. Let's keep rolling with today's show. Next up, some more bulletin board material from Reddit this week. The title of this one, I've had it with this industry. This one showed up on Reddit. Here's what they wrote. I've been driving for over a year now, and I just can't do it anymore. Most local gigs want more experience, but this OTR life, it ain't for the weak. Last night, I was so tired and I was scared. I pulled into a rest area and crashed for 3 hours. My phone was blowing up, dispatch, random numbers, asking why I was late. I told the truth and they got mad. I don't know how much longer I can do this. This post didn't just sit there, of course. It drew a lot of comments. Drivers from every corner of the map chimed in with support, stories, and solid advice. If you're sleepy, don't drive, period. The load can wait. Your life can't. Protect your CDL. That dispatcher ain't paying your tickets. Sleep when you need to. They'll hang you out to dry. Turn your phone off if you have to. Take care of yourself first. Another one said, just work for a garbage company. A good one won't ride you like that. Don't let a bad carrier ruin the whole game. Or there's life after trucking, or at least beyond OTR. Ports, forklifts, warehouses, there's options. And then you get to this one, and this one's not just advice, but it's just math. $400. That's what I gave up to walk away from OTR. But I got back freedom, my kids, my life. Do the math for yourself and ask, what's your freedom worth? Meanwhile, Swagmo Campbell dropped a truth bomb on his feed, which was, that first year of trucking will make you or break you, which drew a response, every year will make you or break you in this business. And Swagmo came right back with, that's true, but the first one is real rough. Now, remember a while back I mentioned a poll where 74% of Americans said they'd be truckers if the pay was right? I laughed then. I still laugh now because posts like this remind me most folks out there don't have a clue what this job's really like. This life isn't easy. Long days, no sleep, hours you don't get paid for, garbage food, alone more often than not. You miss birthdays, holidays, even funerals. This ain't just a job. This is an endurance test. And this also reminds me of that Shane Britt song I played a few episodes back, The Faint of Heart. This ain't for the faint of heart. And that track should be printed on every CDL application. The truth is, and I don't even know what it was like for the old school drivers, the real road warriors from the 70s and 80s. I mean, I ran hard in the 90s, or I thought I did. There's guys who ran harder. But I bet I don't even hold a candle to those guys and have any idea how much grit it took to do what they did back then. Don't push yourself past your limit. Don't gamble with your life or somebody else's. Shut it down. Get your rest and be honest with yourself. Just because you think you can pull that all-nighter when you took the dispatch doesn't mean your body's going to agree with you halfway through it. As a young driver, I used to live on Mountain Dew in Copenhagen. I'd get your load to the moon and back if I had enough Mountain Dew in Copenhagen. The older I got, not so much. It became a crapshoot. It got harder. Age changes the game. So does stress. So does a bunch of things out of your control. Most days I could pull an all-nighter. I did a lot of them. We hauled a lot of mushrooms. And you wanted those things out of your reefer, especially a 1989 utility, as fast as you can get them off there because you didn't want to be buying them if that old reefer crapped out. And they were expensive. So we ran stuff hard overnight, get it off the trailer, nonstop, Philly all the way back to Minnesota with 5, 6, 7, 8 drops in between. But there were days where you just couldn't do it. And you had to make that phone call because it was the right thing to do for yourself and for everybody around you. So learn your limits. Find a company that respects them. Study the freight lanes and the dispatch patterns of the companies that you work for. And if you have to say no, say no. Don't force it. And communicate with them. And if you end up at a company and you find out that they're not going to treat you like a human being behind the wheel, move on. Because at the end of the day, you're the one with the keys, the rig, the wheel. You're the one who's got to live with the consequences of your choices. And for the people on the other end of the phone, calling, at times harassing, we get it. You got a job to do. But if a trucker says they can't do it, they can't do it. And for all our sakes, respect that. And if that's your freight profile, be running loads through the middle of the night, understand not everybody's cut out for it. Don't badger people into trying it. Don't threaten them or hold their livelihood hostage to get them to accept the load. And be understanding when the moment comes. Just because they plan to sleep all afternoon and prep for an all-nighter doesn't mean that they could sleep well. And take the time and invest the time in checking in on them or having them call in before they do it and finding out if they're still good to run it. It's better to find out at 8 o'clock at night than 2 o'clock in the morning. And I get it. I've been on the planner. I've been the dispatcher. I've been the fleet manager. I've been the guy who's had to repower these loads. It's no fun finding some other driver at 10 o'clock at night or 2 in the morning to repower something because you've got a commitment that you're trying to keep with the customer. But we all live on these roads and we all got to live with the consequences that we all make together. There are more important things than that little dot on the map on your computer screen. For the last topic here on the pre-trip, since we already broke the literary ice with a poem, let's shift gears to something a little more lighthearted. I wanted to share a funny story connected to a book I've been reading. Sometimes the world throws a weird coincidence at you, and that's exactly what happened to me the other week. So I'm headed back to OKC this week. Whether you're new to the podcast or not, it wouldn't take a Google genius to figure out where I work these days. I'm part of the IT team at Love's. I manage a team spread out across the country, and I travel back and forth to Oklahoma City when needed. A couple weeks ago, I was headed back to OKC again, and I just received a new book that I'd ordered. The book's called Three-Armed Trucking and Other Tales from the Highway by Gary Bricken. Sounded promising, so I tossed it in my bag for the flight to Phoenix. Once on board, I got settled into my seat, pulled out the book, and tossed it on the tray table. Closed my eyes for a minute, just relaxing before takeoff. A few minutes later, I felt a tap on my shoulder. The guy sitting next to me had just arrived, sat down, and he glanced at the book and said, "That book could be about me and my brother." And then with a little grin, he waved the arm he had just nudged me with, an amputated arm. We both laughed. I told him I hadn't cracked the book open yet, but now I was definitely curious. And wouldn't you know it, the very first story in the book is about two friends who ran team, and one of them only had one arm. It's a short story, just over 5 pages, but it was fantastic. Funny, heartfelt, full of those little golden nuggets of trucking wisdom. I hadn't heard of Gary Bricken before, at least not that I remembered, but this story got me curious. I started looking into him, and sure enough, he's got a long legacy in trucking and in trucking media. Odds are, I've probably read his work, you've probably read his work before without even realizing it. And I love stories like these, trucking tales from before my time. Reading them always reminds me that I'm not half the man that those drivers were. No AC, running I-10 in the summertime, windshields that cracked open on the bottom for airflow. And in this story, Roman, a one-armed driver, he was missing his right arm, shifting a double stick transmission with his left hand, reaching through the steering wheel to make it happen. Can you imagine watching what it took to do that? Making corners, things like that. Imagine the things that the rest of us take for granted, floating gears around corners and things like that. Anyway, I just can't imagine what it took to accomplish something like that. And I'm sure there's a lot of stories out there like that of people managing around situations that make what I thought was a hard enough job even harder and making it look easy. So anyway, it's a great little book of short stories. I ended up telling my seatmate about that first story once I read it. We laughed some more, shared a bit of in-air camaraderie, which felt fitting after reading a story which was all about camaraderie on the road. So thank you, Gary Bricken. Appreciate that story, and I'm looking forward to reading the rest of them. That's the pre-trip for this week. No defects detected, but that's just my opinion. If you find defects, let us know. Get that seat adjusted. Let's push the buttons in. We've got work to do. Trans-Carolina Permits is based out of North Carolina. They've been in business since 1977, and they've got a team with a ton of experience in all of our favorite part of trucking, which of course is the government. They provide a portfolio of services for the trucking industry, not to mention they have a compliance program. They'll help you with clearinghouse setup and queries, IFTA, and mileage reporting, so your state-by-state mileage, your fuel purchase tracking, and get that wrapped up into a nice little bundle for quarterly filings. They're a one-stop shop for your trucking needs. You can find them on Facebook and LinkedIn, or check out their website, transcarolinapermits.com, or give them a call at 1-800-899-4870.
It's by truckers for truckers. This is the Channel 19 Experience. Let's hit the road.
Let's kick it up to line 3 and hammer out the money line this week. It's been a minute since I hit pause on my own trucking story here on the podcast, about 7 weeks to be exact. So let's jump back in and talk legacy. My trucking legacy. Heading back home, recently stirred up some feelings, got me a little bit nostalgic. Last time we left off with my story, I had just turned 21. I'd spent the previous year running outlaw across the country, dodging scales and playing it fast and loose as a 20-year-old. If you remember, that nice DOT officer in Iowa had figured out exactly what I'd been up to, but I was 4 days past 21 and he was kind enough to let it all slide, gave me a pass, and now basically I had a clean slate. I was relatively legal, 21 years old, driving an 88 International 9370, pulling a 1989 utility 48-foot reefer that I owned, had a Carrier Phoenix strapped to the front of it. And at that time, the trailer was still mostly white. But that didn't last long because the soot from my 3406B Cat was already blackening it up, thanks to some short stacks that were put on it to do field work, but I had never bothered to swap out for taller ones. I was leased on to a farmer/trucking company owner in rural Minnesota. He had some local freight, some regional freight, but mostly it was all brokered. The kind you take when you've got an appetite for risk and no set destination. He'd get a load list faxed over to him in the morning, multiple pages. You'd page through, starting with, I guess, Alaska is the first state and ending in whatever the last state is, Wyoming, I guess, in the Atlas. Maybe there was Yukon Territory loads in there. He'd piece together a plan from there. We had no idea where I was really going to go next. I think most of the time he gave me long runs just so he didn't have to talk to me very often. And honestly, I didn't mind. Some of the loads paid decent. Most of them didn't. We bounced empty a lot, sat around for days a lot. There was a couple of us that were weird enough to want to wander around doing this off these load sheets. And it wasn't the most well thought out plan, but I had a truck full of books, a case full of CDs, a paid off truck and trailer, a paid off pickup truck at home, and $250 rent. So I was what you call a low overhead operation. I could have hauled freight for fuel cost plus 10 cents a mile and still been fine. And some days that's pretty much about what it paid. But what I really did was learn. And keep in mind, this was the 90s, right? A different world. No cell phones, no GPS, just me, a Rand McNally Road Atlas, a stack of Hudson City Guides, and a roll of quarters for the payphone. If you had a prepaid calling card, you were living high, at least until the hidden fees kicked in. We thought those things were a steal. It was a lot easier than carrying around or rounding up quarters all the time. And yeah, there'd be some shady guy, some truck stop hustler out selling them or in front of the building or out at the fuel island. They'd have a pocket in their jacket filled with them. $100 for 50 or 100 minutes for $15. Yeah, until you made 2 calls and they were gone. You never knew if the cards would work or if the guy would still be standing there 10 minutes later when it didn't. But, you know, you took the risk. It was cheaper and easier than quarters. And when Farmer Al couldn't find a decent load on the fax machine, he'd tell you to head inside and go stare up at the old TV tube in the corner of the driver's lounge, the one cycling through the DAT loads board info. It was like watching the stock ticker in Times Square if it only scrolled bad news. You jot down a couple numbers, head to the bank of payphones, start calling. 9 times out of 10, that load was already gone, been gone for 2 days, shouldn't even be up here, they'd say. But that's when the real show started. Hey, I don't have that load, but I've got this other load you might be interested in. Slick talkers, smooth lies. It's light, it's easy, pays great. Don't worry about the backhaul. There's all kinds of loads coming out of there. And you know what? Sometimes you just take them because you were tired of sitting there. And there was a reason these loads were still available, right? Whether it was the fax machine or the TV screen, they were garbage. No backhauls, terrible pay, shady brokers who shorted you, shippers and receivers who moved at the speed of mud, gear busting freight, circus loads going into the various markets, Hunts Point, Chelsea to Water Market. A lot of loads that made you question your life choices. And it had been a short life, but still. But you learned. You started seeing the patterns. Get down to the southeast and realize it's watermelon season. Hey, there's some decent paying loads. Yeah, we got to sit around in a field somewhere and watch them load them for half the day. If the money was right, it worked out pretty good. One thing I did during that time, which I really miss, was I would just ask people questions. I'd ask to see stuff. If I went to a warehouse or a manufacturing facility, I'd ask, hey, can I go look around while you're unloading me? Or, hey, can you show me, what do you guys do here? And I talked to anybody who'd give me the time of day. People probably thought I was a little slow. I'm from the sleepy town in the Midwest. I didn't know what the hell was going on in some of these places. I remember one place in particular out at the tannery. I went delivered some deer and elk hides to a tannery, and they took me. I mean, this was out back in the woods in Washington. And they gave me a whole tour. It was great. They were all proud of themselves. I'm pretty sure most of that stuff wasn't legal by OSHA standards or disposal of chemicals. They showed me how it was done, and it was cool to see. Almost everybody universally was kind, willing to show me around, take a minute to tell me about what goes on. I'd ask them about freight. Hey, do you haul a lot of these loads? Every once in a while, we get back and be able to find a load out of one of the same places again if we were in that area. I was basically treating it like I was on one giant 8th grade field trip, and I ditched the chaperones and I was just wandering around the museum by myself. And yeah, during those years, I got lucky. I didn't have any major breakdowns. My truck and reefer held up. Some little stuff broke. I learned how to fix it on the side of the road. Somebody pull up, help me out, tell me what to do. Lots of great guys and gals back then in the business. Or somebody pull over. A lot of these guys, they'd pull over and they weren't in the mood to watch me screw around with it for an hour when they could get it done in 10 minutes. So they'd just say, watch out or stand back, and they'd jump in and they'd start doing it for me. And I'd made sure I watched and paid attention. I'd gauge whether they were in the mood for me to be asking questions or not. If they weren't, I'd shut my mouth, make some mental notes. And when I got a hold of somebody who knew what they were doing, like the legend or my Uncle Larry, I'd ask them, hey, I watched them do this, but I wasn't sure why they were doing it this way. Can you tell me what that was all about? And then there were some stories that could have ended worse, that's for sure. I was a bit naive, a bit stupid, you could say. One night I ended up in Boys Town, down across the border from McAllen. What is it, Reynosa on that side? We hauled a load to McAllen, thinking, oh, there's got to be a lot of freight. They're making everything out of Mexico these days. We'd be able to get a load out of McAllen easy. Well, not so fast. For a couple of days of sitting around, and I was bored as hell, and it was hot. Got on the CB, like, what's there to do around here? Like, I'm tired of sitting around here. You should go over to Mexico, go over to Boys Town. Okay, sounds like fun. How do I get there? They're like, well, just call a taxi. They'll come pick you up, take you over to Boys Town. So I got a taxi, went over to Boys Town, figured that's a bit of a funny name for a place, but whatever. So I think if I remember right, I walked across the bridge to Mexico and then got a taxi on that side. And then they took me over to Boys Town. I mean, I'm an idiot. I don't know any better. We're going to have some fun and get a couple drinks at Boys Town. So I got over there, and of course, if you've ever been over there, you know what it's about. I didn't. So I just thought, wow, this is like a little, I don't know, county fair. We got a bar over here, and we got a restaurant over here, and another bar over there. And it's almost like a modern, what Hooters turned out to be, dancing girls, playing music, drinks. You got people walking around selling flowers you can buy for the girls dancing in the club. And there's American businessmen in there and living it up large, getting drunk. And I've never been much of a drinker. I had a couple beers and they were like 3 roses for 8 pesos, which was like $1 or something. So I'm like, sure, here's the girls. And they were all nice, couldn't speak a lick of English or maybe a couple words, and I couldn't speak any Spanish that was functional. So we mostly just talked, and they laughed when I laughed, and I laughed when they laughed. And I went on my way. A couple girls told me to write them when I got back home. And I said, sure, I would, like a fool. But anyway, I had my night and decided it was time to go home, and thought, well, this is not nearly as exciting as everyone made it out to be. I mean, there's probably bars over in McAllen that I wouldn't have had to take a taxi ride so far to get here. But anyway, as I walked out, I noticed something I hadn't seen on the way in, is there were guys on the walls on the rooftops holding rifles, just pacing back and forth. And then suddenly it clicked to me, maybe this wasn't such an innocent little tourist trap after all. In hindsight, that wasn't my only stupid adventure to the wrong part of town or the wrong side of the border. In this case, I was more lucky than smart at times. But like I said, whether it was with the truck or some of these adventures, I got lucky. Nothing bad ever happened. Through all the chaos, being out there and hauling loads that no sensible person should have been hauling, I was learning, right? And I also started to learn something about myself. I figured out what I didn't like to do in trucking. I figured out what parts of the country I didn't enjoy driving in, which parts drained me, which parts were exhausting, which cities got on my nerves. And we've all got them. We've got a list, the things you don't want to do. I realized I wasn't really a West Coast kind of guy. Spaces were too big. I'm like, this is just boring and too far. Like, the first time's okay. The second time, third time, like, this just wears me out. Like, I gotta be in a little more action. And I started to dream up a plan, of a purpose. It wasn't a good one. It wasn't a clear one. I was 21, but it was a direction. I wanted something more out of it than just chasing raggedy freight and kind of skimming by, maybe getting ahead a little, but then going backwards a week. I wanted to be more like the heroes in my life, the legend, my Uncle Larry. I wanted a real truck. I was tired of crawling in and out of a flat top sleeper, having basically 12 inches of floor space in the back, never standing up unless I was out of doors. And I wanted to feel proud of my rig when I walked back to it, when I pulled into a parking lot, when I pulled into a warehouse. I saw lots of great rigs out there on the road, and I wanted something that was me. But I knew I'd have to come up with a new plan to do it. So I asked the legend, the one guy I knew had figured out how to make a living consistently in this owner-operator reefer game. And I asked him, I said, get me on with a real outfit. Like, you know who the ones are. You know who to avoid. You've been around. Maybe get me on with the one you're working with. And he laughed. Well, laughed is probably putting it nicely. He scoffed. I don't think he was too thrilled with the idea. Maybe sullied the work a little bit, made it seem less than what it was if we let just any old dumbass come do it. But he also knew what I'd just been doing for the last year, that I survived the chaos and I'd learned. He could tell from the stories that I told, the questions that I asked, that I was figuring it out. And maybe I wasn't ready. I probably wasn't. My truck certainly wasn't. It barely passed the criteria, but I had to promise to do something about it soon. But he also knew another thing, which is I wasn't going to get much further ahead doing what I was doing, chasing freight off of fact sheets and half-ass load boards. Sooner or later, my luck was going to run out. Something was going to blow up that was going to put me in debt again, and then I'd be chasing instead of dragging my dreams forward. So he made the call. He talked him into it, got me leased on there, and it was one of the best gifts he ever gave to me. And that's where I'm going to call it a chapter for now, close up this part of my story, and we'll continue on here in one of the upcoming episodes of what happened next. Let's take a quick detour to line 4 and then talk to Danger Dave and find out what he's been up to this last week. We'll see you on the flip side with the post trip. True TMS is a cloud-based transportation management system. Being in the cloud makes integrations faster and you're able to access the platform from anywhere. It has intuitive planning, on-demand reporting, and easy order creation, rating, and invoices, which turns tedious admin work into streamlined automated workflows. The folks at True TMS have decades of trucking and liquid experience, and they care about this industry. They don't just sell you a product, they're invested in your success. Visit their website, truetms.com, and of course, tell them Channel 19 sent you.
More than anything, this show's about bringing back the sense of community we used to find on the CB, especially good old Channel 19. No rants, no corporate spin, just long-form storytelling from someone who's been behind the wheel, built the fleet, hit rock bottom, and climbed right back up.
All right, so this week we've got a returning guest, the infamous or famous Danger Dave rejoins us here on the program, this time in video, at home at the corporate office there. Welcome back, Dave. Good to talk to you, man.
Yeah, finally made it home after 3 weeks, but long 3 weeks. But yeah, we made her home.
Yeah, that's why I figured it'd be a good time to get you on the show and talk about your most recent adventures, since we drug Mike down the gravel road when he had his fun. What you been dealing with?
Well, let's just start out this episode sponsored by Pendleton Whiskey. And yeah, it was a long week. We were out for 2 weeks already, swung home, and you come home on a Tuesday, so you're like, you can't throw a week away. You got to turn around, take another load. And so I figured what was going to be a quick week was run down to Louisiana, unload, reload, be out over the weekend, but then get home, half-ass decent. On the way down there, I started hearing it was almost like a pipe came loose, or I could hear like air in my motor. I was like, what the hell is going on here? I stopped, checked the turbo boots, all the main, the usual suspects, just to see if any kind of boots or clamps are coming loose, and I didn't see anything. And so no big deal, kept going, driving along, and I had already gotten unloaded and reloaded at this point. I had to go back up to New York. So I stopped at a cool truck stop that I've found before, I've stayed at before, and figured I'd swing in, get something to eat, and come back out to my truck. It's humid, it's 95 degrees. I fire up my truck. All of a sudden I look down my gauge and there's no oil pressure. And I'm like, you hit the key op right away and you're like, oh my, well, you right away.
That can't be.
Yeah. And as a mechanic, you're supposed to be like, start, the most obvious but cheapest fix. But when you're an owner operator, you're like, oh, my truck's, it's dead. Yeah, $30,000, $60,000, I need a new motor. You go right to the first problem. So I sat for a little bit, I calmed down, and I had this happen on my last truck. Saturday morning, I fired it up, no oil pressure. After I had a little panic attack, talked to my mechanic, and he's like, it's an oil pressure sensor on the side of the motor. So that was the first thing. I called the service truck for the next morning to go pick up a service oil pressure sensor and run it down to me. And I mean, that's the most expensive Uber you can think of, is a service truck. But I didn't have the tool for it. I didn't have the deep well socket, so I figured, have him come down to it. He gets down there, looks at it, and goes, oh man, that's too tight. I can't do that here in this parking lot. We got to tow it back to the shop or something. And I go, no, we got to try this. We got to get something done here. So he basically stood there and held a flashlight while I got full of bruises and cuts. I took my fuel filter off, got in there, fought like hell to get this thing in, took the old one out, put the new one in. Barely, you couldn't see any of the sensor. That's how buried it is underneath the fire. I drive a 2020 Lone Star, so the motor is tucked underneath the dash, half of it.
Mhm.
So we got that. I got that swapped out. He goes in, puts the fuel filter on, and the gasket for the fuel filter gets screwed up. So we're shooting diesel all over the place. He has to run back to his shop and get a new fuel filter, run down. We get that swapped in, and they gave me a deal. It still was very expensive, but they gave me a deal for all the screwing around and the, whatnot. Start the truck up, still no oil pressure. And I'm like, I'm out of ideas now. I don't know what else we can do. Um, So, Monday morning, Sunday was Father's Day, so I didn't want to screw up I was already out for Father's Day. I wasn't going to make a tow truck driver come and get me on a Father's Day. And so we waited till Monday. Monday morning, we get hooked up. I don't even think we made it 15, 20 miles down the road. Tow truck driver goes, "Oh, we got to hit the shoulder." And I said, "Well, what's up?" He goes, "Oh, I blew a tire." And only me. I'm sure this has happened to more people than you'd think of, but to me, it's only I would be lucky enough to have a tow truck that's rescuing me break down on the side of the road. So they get a tire run down to the tow truck. It took about an hour and a half, 2 hours. Pull a tire off, and as they're doing it, then they discovered that the blown tire actually took the airbag out. So the tow truck driver's like, and everybody was competent. Everybody was good. I mean, the service mechanic was good. This wrecker, phenomenal guy, interesting. We had plenty of time to talk. We sat on the side of the interstate for about 7.5 hours between the tire and getting the airbag and everything. And super cool guy. Very interesting story that he had. He was actually a captain in the Air Force, and he was stuck in that weird time in the '90s where they're like, "Hey, we've got too many of you captains, so we're gonna let a bunch of you go." Um, get to get to the shop in Nashville, Tennessee at 7 o'clock at night. I go get a hotel room and supper. The next morning, the broker, also a great guy, understanding that trucks break down. I've had plenty of brokers before where they're like, "This is unacceptable. We're going to start cutting pay out of you." This guy was very cool. But he did say politely, he's like, "We got to repower this load somehow, some way. We got to get this load going." And so I talked to the company that I'm leased to, and I said, "Is there any way that you guys can help me get set up on a rental truck?" Because I had called Ryder, Penske, all these truck rental places, and there's only 2 rental trucks I could find in the Nashville area that were available to me. Um, and they required a $10,000 deposit. There's no way in hell. I mean, I know I look like I'm a rich person and I hang out with the Rockefellers and the Trumps, but I don't have 10 grand to just kind of put on hawk. So my company got involved. The next morning, we're at about noon. I got dudes knocking on my hotel room door. Mister, you need to get out now, and it's like, all right. So I called my company again. I'm like, well, what do we do? And they go, well, we have a truck lined up, ready, but we don't have insurance for it. They've been working on it for 4 hours, but they're still working on the insurance to get back to them. So I couldn't leave with the truck. So I show up at the rental place, and there it is. They're like, it's the paperwork or the insurance finally does show up. I walk inside. Fast Times at Richmond High, the dude that gets the 16-year-old girl pregnant, and then he's like bails out. He's like the dirtbag. He's
Yeah.
working at Penske in Nashville, Tennessee. I found this kid is like identical to him. I walk in there. I go, "Hey, here's my confirmation number or whatever. I'm here to pick up my new Pride and Joy." He goes, "Yeah, there's something wrong with the truck, so we switched trucks on you." And I go, "Cool." But they just spent like 4 or 5 hours getting my paperwork ready for this truck. So now you're going to switch trucks on me. The VIN number's not going to match. the make and model isn't going to matter. I went from a Freightliner to a Volvo. And it's like, you could have called anybody and gave me a heads up. Whoa. I guess it's not that big a deal, is it? I'm like, yeah. So I called back to my company again. I go, you're not going to believe this, but they switched trucks on me. And the awesome, who they call it, a contractor support. She's like, you've got to be kidding me. I'm like, no. All right, well, it's going to be, I'm going to get like as many people as I can on this case, but it's still going to be a couple hours. So there I am sitting in my Volvo, idling it. And just as I'm like kind of, starting to cry a little bit, looking at these mystery stains on the walls of this Volvo and wondering who got killed in this thing and who, what happened, my phone rings. I answer it and they're like, hey, this is Kenworth in Nashville. Your truck's ready. Sweet. I run back in. You've never seen a fat kid run as fast as I did back into that office. And I'm like, hey, if I cancel this right now, am I going to get charged for it? And they're like, for just sitting in a truck inside a cage? You didn't even push the brakes in. No, we're not going to charge you for it. Cancel it. I'm out of here. Called another Uber, hauled over to Kenworth. I've never been so happy to see Betty White in my life. Betty White's the name of my truck. But there she was sitting in her glory off to the side. I'm like, oh, thank God. Throw my bags in there. I go inside and I go, well, what was wrong with my truck? And they're like, oh, just the wire harness that plugs into the oil pressure sensor. It just had oil in it. We just, squirted some stuff in there and cleaned it out and works fine. I'm like,
wow.
You gotta be kidding. But it was in such a tight area. And, I'm in a pea-soaked gravel lot in a truck stop. I can't, get back there to look at this thing. Everything I did was I didn't even know I was on the right sensor until I pulled it out and I like matched the numbers and then found, oh, okay, this is the right sensor. So whatever, I paid the another significantly large service bill, because they had to diagnose everything. It wasn't like they just went right to it. They had to do their checklist, and they were great too. Everybody was great. I get in my truck, I call the broker again. I'm like, and it had to have been a roller coaster for him and my dispatcher too, because like I'd call him and be like, hey, this is happening. Oh, I'm on the tow truck. I'm headed to Nashville. And then 5 minutes later, it seemed like, oh, well, I'm on the side of the road in my tow truck. Hey, I got a rental truck. We're going again. Hey, well, there's a problem with the rental truck too. So it was like every time I told him I was getting ready to leave, I had to call him and tell him, hey, well, actually, sorry.
Yeah, because you can't give them the answer to the one thing they want the answer to, which is like, all that aside, when are we going to see our load? Like Friday,
Yeah.
Thursday, 2
Yeah.
months from now? Like, we just want an answer. And you're like,
Yeah.
there is no answer. It's unsolvable question at this point.
And honestly, my dispatcher was awesome, and the broker the same way. They wanted to get the load delivered, but they know that I can't make miracles happen. I was hauling sacked bags of it was like a concrete lime rock mixture that they pour around pools. And so all I'm thinking of is there's like, because it was going to Buffalo, New York, and I'm like, some running back for the Bills probably paid, or Clark Griswold took his his bonus
The
check.
Christmas bonus. Yeah.
Yeah. And he paid for it last fall. And now he wants his damn pool by the 4th of July. And some jackass's truck is broke down in Nashville. And, he's probably calling, screaming. Anyway, everybody was totally understanding. But, we, so I called everybody. I called the broker as I'm weaving through the streets of Nashville, trying to get out of this place and back onto Briley Parkway and whatnot. And I told him, I'm like, man, I don't know how far I'm going to make it, when I'm going to make it. I'm just trying to get the hell out of Nashville, and then I'll figure out from there, what I'll give you a better time tomorrow morning. And I'm talking to your brother, mile marker Mike, about 2 hours north of Nashville, 2 hours, right smack dab in the middle of Louisville, Kentucky, and Nashville. I'm on the phone with your brother, and I hear the beep, 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 and I freeze, and I'm like, and I look down,
Be happening.
yeah. So I look down, it says load shed 1. and I read it out loud. I read it to your brother. Mile Marker Mike and I have the same truck. So we both said at the same time, well, that only happens when the battery goes dead. And I look over at my volt gauge and I'm at 12 volts. And I'm like, oh my, to back up, I had literally said to myself, hey, that rattling noise is gone. Like 15 minutes before that. Because it was rattling. It was making that weird kind of air noise when I was leaving Nashville. And then all of a sudden it like disappeared. And I'm like, well, turns out that was actually my alternator preparing to go to the moon. It had locked up. It was done. Batteries went dead. Luckily, there is a truck stop with a service center, like just down the like 15 miles, close enough to where you think you can make it, but just far enough to where you end up on the ramp with
you
your
can't.
four ways on. Yeah, and you're like, oh, I get in there, and luckily they weren't busy at all. They were waiting for one tech to show up, so I think I waited like 45 minutes or an hour. And I just walked in there and said, my alternator's bad. You got to test my alternator, but I'm pretty sure it's my alternator. They had one on hand, which doesn't ever happen to me. Usually, you got to pay after, because of course it's 515 now, so you're gonna pay after hour delivery charges for the part. But they pulled it off the shelf, slapped it in. The kid that was working on it was like, you couldn't nail him down into one spot. He was just bouncing all over the whole shop and just flying. But good for a guy paying his hourly rate. And then he comes back in, he's like, hey, your batteries are all shot too. I'm like, why wouldn't they be? Why? So
Let's not stop here. Let's
yeah,
keep going.
yeah. I'll probably find 4 flat tires too while you're at it, maybe. So we get all that put on. They hand me another ticket. Now at this point, if you figure out all the money plus the fuel, I basically it would have been cheaper for me to rent an RV and just drive to Buffalo, New York versus what I was doing. I was hauling this load for free at this point. But I text my dispatcher at 8 o'clock at night, leaving Glendale, Kentucky. And I played with the split sleeper berth a little bit. Boom, I get all the way up to Erie, Pennsylvania. And I suck. I don't do well with that split sleeper berth. I did 15 years of oversized. You couldn't run at night or anything like that anyway. So all you did was use it to pause your 14-hour break.
Yeah.
And
You're
then
gonna take your 10-hour break anyway.
take 10-hour off or whatever till sun rises. So here I get parked at about 3:30 in the morning, and dispatcher calls me right away, or like just texted me right away, like, holy crap, I didn't expect to come into the office and see you sitting in Erie, Pennsylvania last night. And did the math, and I'm like, well, wait, if I did 3 hours off in Kentucky, I should only have to do 7 hours off. I literally had 30 minutes to spare to get to Buffalo, New York and get unloaded. So I get there, I pull in, unload. Customer is awesome. They're like, oh, we can't even believe you made it in our driveway. And this driveway, it was funny because you could have had a semi trying to pull out of their driveway and I could have still made it around them. It's just one of those things that once you get in there, you couldn't turn around. You had to back out onto the road. But I guess every other driver that they typically get has a panic attack. And I guess they fought with them or whatever, that they had to stay on the road and unload. They insisted, which the road was actually skinnier. Got in, got unloaded, and I'm like, yeah, so how important was this stuff? Like, you got a project waiting for this, just hoping that, like, I drove through the night.
Save the day, right?
Yeah,
That all of it
yeah,
was worth it.
everybody's all, oh, you're the hero, And they're like, that's stock, it's just inventory. And I'm like, all right, cool. But we got unloaded, saved it. And like I said, the broker is super appreciative, and that was the biggest thing. Like, you see that you try to put yourself in like the broker's side, or like you were the dispatcher. I put myself in the dispatcher shoes too. And I'm sure there's a lot of drivers that are like, yeah, I'm broke down. I'll call you when I'm rolling, and they don't give you any information. And then they call you when they're rolling again. They're like, oh, you don't have a backhaul for me. You don't have anything planned out. It's like, well, we didn't know what was going on or when you were going to get going. The broker's probably getting 400 phone calls from the customer. Well, where's this at? What are we doing? And they look stupid because they're like, I don't know. I haven't heard from the driver. And I read an article about that. Is, stay in communication with your brokers and your dispatchers and stuff like that, and everything will go a lot better. And there's actually brokers that won't. They look for carriers to they'll deal better with a carrier repeatedly
Yeah.
if they're communicating and staying on time and when they tell you you're going to be there at a time, you're there. And so I've always had that in my head, like communication is the biggest key to everything.
Yeah, it
Um,
just kind of trickles down, right? Like I've been on the shipper side too when I worked for
yeah,
Cargill, and you've got somebody, right? There's some customer who's making a fuss, who talks to his sales rep, who's going to show up at my desk and go, "Where the heck's your carrier?" "Oh, we brokered that load out to C.H. Robinson." "Okay, well, where's the truck at?" "Okay, call C.H. Robinson." He tries to call the truck, right? And there's this whole chain of people who are just trying to basically give like one piece of information back up the chain,
yeah,
and the further you go away from the truck driver and the people who actually know trucking, the less anyone even understands like what any of that means, right? Like
right.
oil sensor, oil pressure. I don't know what any of that means. Just like when is my load going to be there?
Yeah. And that was the big thing too. I was doing a mix of I was keeping my dispatchers in connection, but the dispatchers got 200 trucks on the road. And it turned out I found out later that they actually had a truck 60 miles away from me that was also broke down. I was trying to get to Nashville as well. So and that's what so many drivers, I think, they forget. They think, and it's so easy that you're like, well, why aren't you thinking about me? Why don't you remember that I have this day off or this and that? It's like, they got 200 of you to think of, you
Yeah.
know? So I was working with my dispatcher, but I also try to help them out by calling the broker too. So I made sure that I wasn't nothing was getting lost in translation or whatever. But
And it helps because as being the guy who was either both the driver, the dispatcher, or the shipper in this case, or a broker, if you're not hearing right from the guy who's standing there, like you're going to discount over half of it as being BS. Like,
oh yeah. Well,
dispatch, just as much as drivers distrust their dispatchers at times for giving them a line, the brokers are used to getting stories too from dispatchers.
well, that's just it. The dispatchers might be blowing smoke just to, well, uh we tried to sneak a partial on, and that's why the guy's actually late. But
Right.
we're gonna tell him, hey, yeah, he blew a tire. That's why he's actually, why he's late. But even the drivers too. I mean, there's drivers that I just don't feel like driving, so whatever. Oh, I got a flat tire.
Oh yeah.
How do you prove it?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know,
Engine code flashed. I'm over on the side of the road talking to the dealer trying to figure it out.
I had one of the moments once where I woke up. It's one of those, the alarm never went off and you wake up and you're like, why is the sun up? Oh my God. You call a broker, hey, or the customer, I'm a couple hours late. I had a flat tire, I pulled over and, you can cover yourself. But then I had a customer go, well, okay, where's your receipt? Where's the receipt for what? Your flat tire. You had a flat tire. You said you're a couple of hours late. We're here to work you in now. And, I just want to see your receipt. It's like, ooh, I didn't think of that crap.
Yeah, I forgot to get one.
Yeah,
That
yeah,
worked in the 90s, but
it's
now it's all
yeah.
digital. Like, okay,
I
well then you must have got an email, right?
I faxed it in already and then I threw it away. It's one of
Yeah.
those things, or it goes right directly to the office. But yeah, so I made it home. I got all the way up to New York. Oh, throw the batteries and the alternator in, turn the key on, freaking check engine light comes on. This is the first time I've seen a check engine light, and I think I scared the mechanic when I yelled. I yelled the F word. I ain't gonna lie. And he goes, well, what do you do? And I go, oh, you got to hook up to it. Tell me what this is. It was like some kind of high voltage to the after treatment center. And it was the scariest thing you could ever read too. It's like, oh yeah, well here, now my DPF and all that crap's going to hell. And I told him, I said, well, we put new batteries and alternator in it. Maybe we shock the system. So just clear it and we'll see what happens. So I cleared it and it stayed off. I wake up in Pennsylvania getting ready to go to Buffalo. I'm like, all right, we're on the home stretch. We're 2 hours away. We're gonna kick this damn load off and be done. And turn the key back on. The check engine light came back on. And at that point, I so had it. I pulled a piece of tape off, and just stuck it over the damn light. And I was like, well, either we're gonna make it there or not. I don't know. I would hate to see what the broker would actually do. He'd call back, hey, I've been struggling to beat all hell, and I'm 90 miles away, and I'm on the side of the road again, waiting for a tow truck. But
Yeah, I mean, at this point, like, but I'm 6 grand upside down in this load. Like, if you think you're not having fun,
yeah,
you know.
honestly, if it went down again, I would probably got a plane ticket, and like, what, you guys just get it here, well, get it home however you want. I don't really care at this point. But I was talking to my hometown mechanic, and that guy, God bless him too, because honestly, he's given me all his knowledge and wisdom and experience for free at that point over the phone, trying to help me And is there anything harder than to diagnose a truck on the phone?
Yeah,
You
based
got
on a truck driver's descriptions of things.
Yeah, it's making a boo 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 noise, not a tick 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 tick, but a boo 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 boo. It's like you, and then not only that, but like I know enough about engine work to be dangerous. I I'm at least smart enough to know not to pull out the tools because I will really start wrecking shit if I start putting tools out. But yeah, I remember one of the Moira, my I don't know,
Mara, yeah.
Mara. Is that how you say it?
Yep.
I'm gonna call her Moira because I like Schitt's Creek, and the mom is yeah. But anyway, she had said that too. She's like, "Oh, I'm not like a super trucker, mechanic. Like I'm not either. I know I can diagnose stuff, but when I walk into a mechanic shop, the mechanics just blow you off anyway. Like whatever, we'll figure out really what's wrong with it, and then you end up paying for them to diagnose the shit when you were right anyway. But like, it was good to at least have my mechanic look into like the code and go, oh well, you can make it home. Just watch the occurrence count on the dash. If it starts getting up there, you might need to go figure something out. But for whatever it was, it only happened one time. It just never shut the light off. So I knew enough that I would at least make it home. Um, yeah. So here we are. I
Well,
got
that's
one. I got one more day left. I got to kick the load off that I have on in the cities, and then we get to send her into the doctor and get her checked out from taillight to license plate.
there you go. Well, I mean, there's literally no end, right? There's no
No.
finish line on this stuff, right? There's no like, well, that's it. We fixed that, and then everything's good to go, right? Like there's literally, it can go on indefinitely.
Well, and then between the no oil pressure and the knocking noise or the weird noise that I was hearing, which turned out to be the alternator, but I'm like, oh, that's and my past with that purple truck that I had when Mike and I like he'd go down, I'd go down, and there were serious problems with cracking the number 6 piston, the number 2 piston, putting heads on it left and right, getting towed home, getting hauled home, all that stuff. So I instantly right away, I'm like, oh, well, I know that sound. That's the number 5 piston just going right through my oil filter. Yeah, that's what it is. We're screwed. So you know, luckily it all turned out. I mean, unfortunately, in the middle of my manic breakdown, I gotta be stupid enough to start texting my wife too, like, don't order shoes on Amazon because we're screwed right now. It's $30,000. What's it? But well, like even the service when I called the service truck and I was talking to the girl on the phone, and she's like, "Well, it's going to get expensive to have a service truck come down to you. Maybe you just risk it and drive up here." And I'm like, "If I'm actually out of oil pressure, that's a $60,000 error. That locks my motor up. There's no coming back from locking a motor up. You got to put a $60,000 crate motor back into it. No, I'll pay the $1,200 for you to bring a service truck down here." So, I mean, that's the biggest thing is like if you can learn enough to kind of weigh those options when you are broke down, so you don't get talked into doing something like that and locking your motor up. But
Yeah, it's just a series of just crappy choices to make, right? With not enough information to feel good about any of them.
yeah, well, and then I was talking to my hometown mechanic too. I'm like, I think it's the oil pressure, and he goes, oh, or the oil pressure sensor, and he goes, yeah, I don't know what else it would be. And then when I fired it back up, and I still had no oil pressure, and I called him back again, I'm like, I still don't have oil pressure. What else could it be? And he goes, I'm like, is there an oil pump that could go bad? Is there? He goes, they don't break down at all. I'm like, well, all right, yeah, well, motor shot. Here we go.
Well, I mean, the other part that you run the risk of at all points, which is people run out of ideas and just start taking expensive things off to remove, right?
Oh yeah, and then yeah, that's the other part too. Then you start tearing into the head. Well, we need to look inside, or like the new Cummins, to take the head off, you're taking the whole front end off, radiator, you're taking the timing cover off. It is a full day just to take the head off. So that's the other thing you gotta like take in consideration. Like if you needed a head and you're at 550,000, 600,000 miles, you're better
Right.
off just overhauling the motor at that point because you've already torn the whole thing down to the block just to put the head on
Yeah,
it.
you're paying the labor to take it apart and put it back together.
And then you do all that. So I'll tell you right now, it's about $16,000 to put a head on a newer Cummins. So well, then what do you do? 6 months later, a year later, now you got to overhaul it because now you got you know blow by or whatever. So
Yep.
you don't have to be a mechanic, but I mean, know the motor you're working with, know the years, the life, and stuff like that. I guess, and
And get people's opinion, right? Like,
yeah,
the best thing you can have is other people who've been through these experiences and can, understand the choices. Because the worst thing you can do is make a choice not understanding some of the consequences of it, right?
oh yeah,
Just like you said, right? Like, I mean, because you never know. Like mechanics, they'll throw ideas at you and they may not be the best ideas for your long term, right? Like you can put in some new bearings or you can, make certain choices that you're like, well, is it really a good idea to replace one or should I replace them all? Because if I replace one out of six, well, is this engine really going to run right? Or are we just going to tear some crap up really fast because I got
well,
one really tight one and five loose ones?
and you get mechanics on all ends of the spectrum. You get one mechanic that is trying to look out for you and go, well, you can get away with 2 cylinders, or we don't have to do an overhaul yet. We can just, for half the price, we can put a head on it. And then you've
Hmm.
got other guys that are full end of the spectrum. We're gonna make a hell of a lot of money off this guy if we just sell him a whole new crate motor, just tell him his whole truck is, or stuff like that. And I've had mechanics where they're like, yeah, your brakes are low, but you probably make it 8 more months. And to me, the hardest thing is getting my truck in the shop, finding the time to get off the road and get my truck in the shop. So when they say something like this, no, put the brakes on now. I understand I'm giving up 8 months of life on my brakes, but have I'm already taking this week as a loss. Now we're talking about, a couple weeks down the road. I gotta take a whole nother goose egg for another week. We might as well just do it while we're here.
Yeah.
And usually when something like that, to me, I know my luck. My luck is horrible. Um, if I were to wait for 8 weeks down the road, that's when my brakes will go bad and I'm under load. I'm in the middle of the road and now I got to scramble to fix it. It's like I've already had this time allotted to work on my truck, so let's just get it worked on. I feel out my mechanics too. I'll ask them questions or I don't like the guy that's super certain because these are motors. I mean, there's a lot of you can have the to me the best mechanics I've ever found. They'll stop and go, and they think about it for a second. They're like, yeah, well, I'm not really sure. I'd rather hear a mechanic say, I'm not sure, than to hear, oh yeah, it's this, because they're usually the ones that end up usually $36,000 bill, and we haven't figured it out yet. We
Right.
threw a whole bunch of parts and labor at this, and we're just exploring. It's the same thing with a doctor. Like you get a doctor, it's like, I'm not really sure. We're gonna have to try some couple things here, but
Or the
we
guy who really likes to do one thing, and
yeah,
fix something and that's his solution for everything that's
yeah.
even remotely close, right?
Yeah.
Let's just do this. I like doing that one. That one takes me a nice full day and then I don't have to do anything else. And
Well, and he probably found a zebra one time. He got lucky. He's like, it's gonna be this weird, obscure thing. And he was right. So now anytime a truck comes in with a problem, it's that. Hoping that one time he's right again, I don't know. But
well, a couple of
it's
things that I always kind of considered too, having owned, 35 of these beasts, was one, I didn't like taking it apart more than once because there's just a lot of parts that got to go off, come off, and go back on.
yeah,
And we're talking about humans.
yeah,
So I don't want to do that twice if I can avoid it, right? So like you said, if we're in there, let's just eat the cost and we opened it up. Let's fix the crap that's in there that needs fixing. Even if, yeah, I could have got a little more wear out of something or whatever the case might be. But the other thing too is like, at least if I have one, like we're here right now, you take it apart, fix what we're going to fix and put it back together because I don't want to be dealing with a second guy monkeying around with the first guy's handiwork a month from now, or, I'd rather keep kind of a whole boundary around it. Like, listen, you were the only people who've been in here and you replaced everything that you thought needed to be replaced. It's kind of a different conversation. At least it can be.
It gets scary when you get day and night shifts too, because there's
Mm,
sometimes when you do an overhaul. I mean, you could get your truck back faster, but day shift tears it down, night shift puts it back together. And sometimes like night shift doesn't quite get it all the way put back together, so then day shift comes and puts the bow on it. Well, to me, that's if you get good mechanics, and I'm not saying that it'll happen all the time, but I mean, there's just that chance that they're like, well, I stopped here, but he thought he stopped there. And so they missed a step or they forgot to do something. And all of a sudden you're like, oh. And yeah,
yeah.
a good shop is going to, if something were to happen, they're going to fall back on it or whatever. But it's just
Yeah.
it's the extra downtime and the screwing around and everything that goes with it that you don't want to deal with on top of it.
Well, it's
But
like what you said back in episode one, right? When we were just talking about the procedure of, an RGN and not having a farmer
yeah.
come up and stop you midstream and it throws off your whole sequence. And even when it's just the same person,
You think of
right?
that when you got a motor and a million pieces all laid out, dress, and all however you want to do it. But yeah, then all of a sudden it's like, oh, it's break time, you know.
Yep.
So you were in the middle of putting, the rings in a piston or something like that, and then you just go on break and you come back, you're like, oh, where was I at?
Yep.
But
Or you think you were at some place and then you get 4 steps down and you're like, wait, why do I still have 4 bolts sitting here?
and that's why I give mechanics all the respect in the world because I couldn't do it because I get so sidetracked. Like if I'm working on my house or something like that, you're putting carpet on the steps, and then all of a sudden, next thing you know, you're replacing the plate on a light switch. Because
Mhm.
halfway through your project, you look up and you're like, oh, I don't like that light switch. And there I am doing something. And then next thing you know, I'm under the sink. My carpet on the steps is halfway done. I got a light switch hanging by the wires, and I'm under the sink redoing the pipes because that's how I am. And I couldn't be a mechanic because of that reason. I get too sidetracked all the time. But so I will never talk bad about a mechanic, even if I've had bad luck with mechanics too. I try to give everybody the benefit of the doubt, because well, first off, if you're not willing to do the work yourself, who are you to talk bad about somebody else? You know what I mean? That you paid to do it.
Yep.
There's personality things that could be an issue or whatever, but yeah, if you're not willing to do it yourself or you can't do it yourself, you really can't turn around and go, "Well, you suck." Well, how do you know you can't do my
Okay, do
job?
better, Chief. Well, it's funny you talked about all this, and one of the things that I was working on for an upcoming show and for the website, we did the Fuel Island etiquette stuff, and one of the other things that I was working on was customer etiquette, right?
Yeah,
And but I mean it's more than, I mean, customer etiquette is one aspect of kind of that interpersonal etiquette, right? Whether we're talking about the broker here, your dispatcher, the mechanic, right? You interacted with a lot of people you did not expect to interact with over the last week.
oh yeah,
People you were not especially happy to be interacting, not because of anything they did, just the circumstances were not um, happy moments for you. It wasn't like you were swinging in saying, "Hey guys, look, I got a new puppy.
yeah.
Let's all celebrate together and have some cupcakes." I mean, this is costing a crap load of money. It's costing time. You're losing money and revenue. Nobody's happy. But how you deal with people can significantly increase your odds for decent outcomes. It's not a guarantee, but brother, it can help a lot.
One of the people I worked for, he put it this way. He's like, I own a trucking company. The only thing I have to sell is service, and my number one salesman is my driver. And I never really put it that way. I've always thought like, well, I've worked in an office, I've worked here, I've worked there, and I can't handle being around coworkers that frequently. And that's why I've always kind of liked truck driving because I can listen to my music as loud as I want. If you don't like Bob Dylan, I don't care. You're not in my truck with me. If I don't want to talk to you on the phone, I don't have to. But yeah, but I have enough salesman, enough personality that for that 15 minutes when I jump out of the truck, I'm always try to be chipper. I don't care, I don't care. My wife just chewed me out that I left because I didn't clean the kitchen before I left. Whatever's wrong with the truck, I always try to think in my head, like, these people that I'm delivering to, not only are they not the reason why my day is going bad or my week is going bad or month is going bad, but that's my revenue,
Yeah,
and you come out there with a pissy attitude and you come on, I don't get paid to do that. I'm not doing this. You do this. That's your job. Uh, you're not getting hired back. Every load that you unload or reload at is a job interview for your business. And like all I've ever worked for is small businesses, and that one crappy driver can make or break a small trucking company. You know,
for sure.
you come in there with a bad attitude, and you're the only representative that they've ever seen. And maybe this is a one-off load, even if it's a brokered load. I mean, there's been times where a customer's having a bad experience or having a bad run with a broker. They're constantly getting crappy drivers in. That one good driver could come in and they turn around, look at the side of the door, and they go, "Oh, you know what? Why don't we call them directly instead of dealing with this broker from now on? This broker's always dropping the ball of this and that. Why don't we just call them directly?"
Yep.
So that's one thing that people always need to keep in mind too, is like your attitude is huge. And in today's day and age, it's even easier because there's so many, non-English speaking drivers. There's drivers that aren't professional when they show up, by appearance. And appearance
Yep.
goes a long way too. You hear guys that are, "Oh, everybody's wearing shorts and flip-flops and blah blah," and I could care less if you're driving from Minnesota to New York and, you know, the first 2 days you're not getting out of your truck besides going to the fuel island or whatever. So wear shorts and flip-flops. I could care less. But when you show up to the customer to unload or load, you better look like you're there to drive a truck. You're there professionally to do the job, And if you had a plumber show up and he's, wearing swim trunks and a tank top, and is it mean he's a shitty plumber? Probably not. But you've already judged him a little bit at that point.
Yeah, you're gonna have a little skepticism.
Yeah. Well, because you're like, I'm letting this guy in my house. He looks like he just stole a bunch of copper pipe and pulled some wires out of some abandoned house. Like, so you want to have some kind of a professionalism to it or whatever, and your demeanor and your character, and yeah, I don't know.
And just all the little things too that you can possibly do, whether that's not slamming the door, not, you know, smelling like plan to
Yeah,
be amongst humans today.
you'll
You
have
know,
to you'll have to walk into their office, and you want to like just reek out the entire office when you're walking in there, whatever, just
yeah,
little
but
things.
even aside from all that other stuff, your attitude and your demeanor
Hmm.
outweigh all that because you can walk in a business suit if you're a dick
Oh yeah,
that nobody cares anymore
yeah,
and so your attitude goes. I mean, I've sat and I've been pulled in scales and standing with the DOT officer in the scale, and some guy comes in behind me, just, "What the hell did you pull me around? You know how many years I've been," and I'm like, did you sweet, because I'm getting out of here fast 'cause they're
yep.
gonna move on from me and throw the book at that guy. And I'm like, did you really think like that approach, like was gonna be the winner to make your day easier?
Well, and you see a lot of trucks too, and as they're pulling into the truck stop, you see paper and papers all over their dash, a carton of cigarettes packed up in there. You can see behind their sleeper. You can see a lot more through a windshield than what you realize.
Yep.
And the truck maybe hasn't been washed in I don't know how long. I'm not saying you got to have it shined and show work, truck show ready, but have a professional appearance to it. A, you got a messy truck and it's all nasty looking. It just makes it look like the thing's not ready, not gonna be dependable or whatever. And like my truck looks nice, but it's not. It broke down. Every truck breaks
Yeah.
down, but it's how you present yourself. And like even when you come into a scale, when you've got that crap all over your dash,
Yeah.
and then the DOT officer comes up and talks to you, you open your door and you got trash rolling out on the floor, on the ground, they're just gonna go, well, if he's gonna live in a mess, what is his paperwork look like? I bet his paperwork's a mess. I bet he doesn't even know the last time his truck's been serviced or greased or anything like that. And I'll
Yeah.
guarantee he hasn't looked at a tire in the last, 4 months. So, I mean, you just open yourself up to more and more inspections. And
Yeah.
so,
Well, I mean, the big thing, right? Like, you said you got up there and, you know, even though all what transpired, the ups and downs, the roller coaster of, you know, budgetary collapse, back to, oh my God, maybe we're done and we're ready to roll. Oh no, we're not. And not just, you had the check engine light come on right before, right? I mean, just
yeah,
everything leading up, even in that moment, right? Of like, hey, this guy he ordered some stuff and he thought somebody was going to bring it, not carrying that in to, because you could very easily have made what turned out to be a smooth situation crappy by the look on your face, the attitude when
oh
you
yeah.
talk to him, all that stuff. Like you can always make it worse.
Well, and I have the male equivalent of resting bitch face. I don't know. Everybody always thinks that I'm looking like I'm about to rip their head off, and I'm actually the nicest guy you could actually be. I will tear your head off if you give me a reason, but for the most part, I always try to give everybody the benefit of the doubt, try to give them the respect that I want to be given. And it's when you don't, reciprocate that respect, that's when I start getting irritated. But like dispatchers, I was in a bad spot. I had a lot going on. And my dispatcher, all they're trying to do is just get an idea of what's going on or what they can tell the broker, the customer, or whatnot. And so many people just use the dispatcher as a punching bag, start screaming and yelling at them like it's their
Yeah.
fault too. And that's people gotta understand too, is the dispatcher's just trying to get an idea what's going on. You can't just yeah. Now you get some dispatchers that'll have a bit of an attitude about it because they don't fully appreciate the situation that you're in either.
Yeah.
And so then they'll put a little extra undue stress or well, we gotta get this load delivered. Well, okay, but I can't. I'm
Yeah.
working on it, but I can't. I understand dispatchers do need to understand the drivers that do appreciate the issue at hand as far as the load goes, but they also have to understand that um the load can't move without my truck not moving.
Yeah.
So, but that was my big thing. I just made sure that I talked very professionally, kept my dispatchers in a loop. Um, but understood that I can't take my problems out on them because that's not their fault. And that's what people need to realize too. Like even when I've heard guys that just rip on a dispatcher because they show up at a spot and they're not ready to load. And so they end up sitting for 2, 3 hours. That sucks. It does, but it's not the dispatcher's fault. It's not the dispatcher's responsibility to call and go, are you sure it's ready? Are you positive? Are you got everything? Because my guy's coming in there at 3 o'clock. Sometimes you go to load and places are just they don't have their crap together. So
Yeah, or their day went to crap, right?
yeah,
Something
or
didn't
so
happen,
yeah,
somebody didn't show up, one of their machines broke down and made
yeah.
everything worse.
They
The
weren't
printer
ready for
broke,
you.
they didn't have any toner for the printer and couldn't print the pick lists, whatever.
Yeah, the forklift didn't start. They had the crane didn't show up or whatever. There's 100 things that that's what's so unique about this trucking industry. And they say that there's a driver shortage, and there probably is a shortage for good drivers. But we've also got to our logistics systems has gotten to that just in time
Hmm.
logistics system, and that is scary in a way. I mean, it's nice because smaller companies or medium-sized companies don't have to have the warehouse or the inventory, and then finance or foot the bill for all this inventory that they might not sell for a year, 2, 3 years. But then all of a sudden there's a panic attack when they're like, oh well, we can get this product in 3 days, so we're not going to even worry about it. And then all of a sudden, all a truck breaks down, and now customers are screaming at them, and they're freaking out.
Yeah.
So I mean,
Well, I think one of the biggest things, one of the values of doing this podcast to me, right? What makes me get up in the morning and want to do it and keep working on it is to share the stories like this because of the people who've never lived it, right? And you
oh
can
yeah,
come in and understand, like, you know, it's not, I work in an office job now. I don't have days at work like I did when I was an owner operator where I have something happen that has catastrophic financial implications in my day,
For yeah,
right? I could get fired, I could get laid off, but like I'm not going to press the wrong button or just randomly, I didn't bring my machine to the business and go, I hope the return key doesn't just blow up on my keyboard and now I'm going to be facing financial ruin, right?
yeah,
Or having the conversation like you said, like I got to call the wife and tell her stop ordering crap on Amazon because that's our food money now.
yeah,
um, just stuff like that, and the pressure that that puts on you. Also, like you're on an island out there, right? And you're trying to make decisions, you're trying to coordinate resources, I mean, you've become the planner, the dispatcher, the customer service rep, all these things all at once when you thought it was just, hey, I'm going to cruise up from, Nashville up to Buffalo, New York. It's a lot of crap to deal with. So people on the other end like have a bit of grace and compassion for and empathy for the guy who's like his day went from a normal day to probably almost like up there with the worst possible day this business has to offer.
yeah. Well, and it's funny that you put it that way because I mean, like I'm good at romanticizing the trucking part of it. Like that's why I love trucking. There's nothing better than 5 a.m. in Montana and the sun is just starting to peek up over the mountains. Like I get giddy about that crap all the time. I love trucking. I also hate trucking because I hate leaving my wife and my kids. I hate, being gone all the time. But you always find these little moments of like romance in the industry, in the business where you're like, oh, what other job could I have this? But like I said to my wife too, is like when you're broke down, 1,200 miles away from home, away from anybody you've never felt so alone ever in your life because you're there by yourself. And if you stop and pay attention, there are people, complete strangers that will, ask you what's going on and try to help you out any way possible. But they really can't do a whole lot either. And I guess the romance I found inside of that too is like all the cool people that I probably wouldn't have met or dealt with had that been a nice, easy cruise up to Buffalo, which was exactly what I planned on. Loading Friday afternoon and just sailing there's nothing better than sailing all weekend across country. Most of
Mhm.
the scales are closed, everything's nice and quiet. You just nice casual drive. And yeah, then that happened. But like I said, even that service truck driver that showed up the first day, he was a super cool dude. Just you know, was not prepared to work on that situation. The wrecker driver, fascinating. I mean, it sucked that we're sitting there for 7 hours on the side of the road, but he also is stuck there for 7 hours. And he,
Right.
like when we're talking about the customer service part of it, like he's sitting there thinking too, like I look like an asshole right now, because but
Yeah.
everybody's tire blows out. He was actually impressed or whatever about how calm or how I was actually I'm good at making jokes and joking around when the shit has hit the
The
fan. It's
worst it
sprayed
gets.
everywhere. Yeah. And I told him, I'm like, well, man, it was a tire. Like I've had tires blow it on me too. Is at the end of the day, a tow truck is just a truck and can break down just as easily. It sucks that my truck was on his truck at the time, but it's Russian roulette when it comes to that. Hotels that I went to, there's so many. You get so easy to just be like secluded or feel secluded when you're out driving truck, like you're all by yourself. But if you actually stop and pay attention to everybody around, there's actually a lot of cool, good people, around anywhere you go, you know.
Yep.
And yeah, it's kind it sucks and you wish you never had like a week like that happen, but it is kind of nice to have it every once in a while just so you kind of do realize like there's I don't know, I don't even know what the word I'm saying is. You're the philosophy major, damn it. You should. What am I trying to say here?
Well, the feeling I got was when you were describing getting back to your truck and seeing Betty White, and I could I could feel it inside of me from memories of that, of like, I love you again. It's so good to see you, you dirty, rotten scoundrel that just failed me massively over the last 4 days, but let's be friends again.
You know, And the funny thing about that too is like the second that something went wrong too, the first thing out of your mouth, you piece of shit. And then you stop and think about it. You're like, you know what? I've had you for 2 years. I put 300,000 miles in it. I've made how much money off of you? Like, you've been a really good truck. And this is the first time you broke down on me instantly. You piece of, and you're like ready to punch the steering wheel too. But,
Yeah.
and yeah, that's what it is too. It's like you finally get back to your, well, and then you get inside that rental truck and you see the nightmare or the mass murder or whatever that happened inside there. And you're like, oh no. You finally get back to your truck. You're like, thank God I can sleep in my bed.
But
I
I never
know.
knew how much I appreciated this
Yeah.
faux wood grain.
Yeah. And my truck has stains in it too, but I know what those stains are. And they're not, I know that they're not bodily fluids. They're not, fecal matter or whatever. I know I hit a bump and spilled coffee over there. So, that's what that is. But dude, it was wild, man. Like the foot of the sleeper, it was like I gotta send you pictures of it. It was like just black. And I'm like, how? It was like I don't know if Shaquille O'Neal was driving it, but he like walked barefoot, across the so he got his feet prints all over, and then the head, there was like stains across the head. And I don't care what anybody says. I've heard it so many times. They're like, oh, the Volvo has got the biggest sleeper, the most comfortable sleeper. Get in a international because I'll tell you what, I got more room and more comfort in my international sleeper than I ever had in it was just there's a lot of room, but it's all like seems cluttered or like
Mm.
I almost knocked myself out because they had the upper bunk down, and I've never had a upper bunk. So I bent down to grab my phone off the bed and just drilled my forehead on that bunk. I'm like, oh my God. I don't know. Whatever. I guess to each their own. Even my 579 Pete that I had a hell of a lot more room. It feels like than that thing did. It just seemed all claustrophobic and I'm not making fun of Freightliner or Volvo. I'm not one of those guys. I mean, obviously the rental truck is going to be your bare bones
Yeah, lowest
get,
spec.
get you by, and they know when they're when they know when they're specing it that it's just going to get used and abused, so they're not going to waste any extra frills or money on it. So
So did you take like your shoe and make like a random shoe print on the ceiling or something just to make the next guy's, make him scratch his head for a while and go, what the
I
hell happened?
I probably would have, but they probably would have billed me $500 for cleaning because that's what I just picture that everybody's just out to get money out of you. You know what I mean? I,
Yeah.
I knocked one of the cup holders loose and it flopped on the floor, and I even tried to reinstall that because I was like, I'm not paying. They're going to try and say that I broke the cup holder or something. You know, I don't know.
Well,
So
buddy, you almost made it, right? Or
yeah,
you made it through that episode, I should
yeah.
say.
Hopefully we got another couple weeks before any more excitement. But man, it was a long, long week, and it just every you try to stay positive too, and it's just like every little thing that happens just chipping another little bit of your soul out of you. By the end of the week, it's like I'm done with it. I could care less. I'm done. I just want to get home. Then you're within 30 miles. You're like I was 30 miles away from my house last night too, and it's like all of a sudden you get just like re-energized or like yes, I did it. But you don't want to get too cocky because you're not there until you're there.
Right.
I've known that in the past too. But yeah, yeah, it was a good homecoming last night just from all that. You feel like you're coming home from battle again. And I literally, I mean, I got bruises all up my forearms and that how they build these trucks nowadays and pack everything. That's the other thing I give credit to these mechanics for having to deal with all that and all the compacting of the motor and everything that goes with it too, and all these sensors that are just buried. It's like, how do you guys? It baffles me to even know that they can pull that off. I don't know,
Yeah.
but I suppose because everything's assembled now on an assembly line, so it's frame, motor, everything, and then the bodies last. Well, then engineers are just slamming the damn thing on. But like you look at a model W900, 1975 or whatever. It's the same size truck as the modern W900.
Hmm.
So it's like, how is everything so damn compact and like harder to get at than it was 50 years ago? But I suppose it's just more
more
shit that you gotta
more
put on top.
stuff.
Yeah.
Well, it's like I had a BMW car. I don't have it anymore because it started to break, and I was like, "That's it. I'm not paying BMW repair rates. It's out of
Yeah.
warranty, and like, bye bye." But I had a battery problem, and like you couldn't. It took me 2 hours to get the front battery out, and I'm like, did anyone ever expect to have to take this battery out again? Because it seems like the answer was no. Like, hey, hey, Franz, you know, you think we'll ever have to replace these? Absolutely not. Okay, bolt it to the frame, you know?
Somebody will, but it's not me, so I don't care.
Yeah.
So just, well, my buddy in high school, he had like a Dodge Stratus, or I don't remember what the hell it was, but he had dead battery. And then I was like, well, we can swap a battery out in the parking lot, no big deal. I popped the hood and there's no battery. I'm like, where the hell is it? And I ended up calling the dealer, and they're like, yeah, you gotta take the right rear tire off and then pull the plastic out. And I'm like, what? They're like, well, yeah, that's where there's jumper points up and under the hood, but the battery's actually underneath the right rear tire. And I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. So there we are taking a tire off to change a battery. It's like, well, battery's already a pain in the ass. My wife's car is the same thing. This is the alternator. And then my buddy's a mechanic. He's like, yeah, but we gotta drain the radiator. I'm like, why do you gotta drain the radiator? You do an alternator. He's like, it's because the motor's sideways and the way the pipes and everything are. He goes, you have to drop the bottom pipe off to get it out of the way to get to the alternator.
Well, awesome, buddy. Glad you could swing by and talk about your week, that you were emotionally ready and, had processed things enough to be in a state of mind to talk about your week. You had the right level of Pendleton to, uh,
Yeah, I had
we
a
didn't go through tears, no anger. Like, good job.
I'm out of tears. That's all flushed out of me. So, well, it was good talking to you. Hopefully everything goes out. And like I said, hopefully at least somebody's listening to this. Like, I'm trying to think in my head when I was preparing myself for this, like, there is the guy that's thinking about getting into trucking that hopefully maybe stumbles across this. There's the company driver that's thinking about being an owner operator. And let me tell you, like, it's rewarding. There's rewards to being an owner operator, but you can't spend all your money, like save your money, because you could
There's
have
gonna
a
be days like this.
I had a $3,600 just to get home. I ended up hauling that last load for free. And that it's not all, I don't know what to say. There's pros to it. There's a lot of cons to it. I regret being an owner operator? No, I still happier in hell that I did it. I think it benefits my family, but it's not for everybody. Some
Yeah.
people don't want that headache. I tell you
Yeah.
what, when I was sitting there in Nashville or in the truck stop, it would have been so nice to call the boss and go, man, you're not going to believe what happened to your truck. Call me when you figure something out. Crawl back in the sleeper.
Yeah.
But uh, there's a lot to do your research. Who was the Frederickson? What was their last name? The couple that were on. They bought a truck and lived in it for 2 years with their kid.
The Feathersons.
Feathersons. I love the way he said that too. Like everything's a challenge. You just got to kind of, and he was well researched and he dove in to figure out he knew what he had, and that's the best way to look at it and look at everything as like a challenge and how are you going to overcome that, that next level or whatever. And as long as you keep that mindset, it sucks. It still sucks, but you got to just know how you're gonna and prepare for it. Always think about that. Like if this is going to happen to me, what do I do? How would I handle this? Do I have the banker that's going to have a good sense of humor when I walk in there in tears and half drunk saying I need $18,000, So, but
Right on.
yeah. So hopefully everybody that's listening to that, maybe they get something out of it or whatever. I'm not on here just to weep and cry and piss and moan a little bit, even though I am doing that a little bit, but
It's the reality of the business.
yeah,
Whether you
it's,
whether you scream, into your pillow in the bunk, or you scream at the windshield, or cry your eyes out.
yeah.
This is part of the game.
Yeah, it's just there's a lot that can, it's not there's more than just the truck going down on you too. I mean, there's people that don't want to pay you. There's a whole lot that can go wrong and there's a whole lot that can go right. And the thing is too, even if you're having a bad run, if you're 2-3 weeks where everything keeps breaking down, or somebody doesn't want to pay you and this and that, or you get bad, try to find the romance in like I was saying too, stop, live in the moment, and like, oh, look at that sunrise, or I got to see this that I wouldn't have seen if I was just stayed in, rural Minnesota,
Look at
so
the lovely way that tow truck driver's looking at me and
yeah,
how that makes me feel.
yeah, yeah, he's totally cool, I wish, he would actually done really well on this podcast. If he had a major in broadcasting. He was a DJ in high school.
This is the Air Force guy?
Yeah, he was in the Air
Yeah.
Force too, and stuff like that. Very interesting. I mean, we got very intimate. I knew a lot about his life and all that. It was a good time. But that's my personality though too. I want to dig into people and figure out where they came from and their background, and because like I said, rural Minnesota is boring. We all have the same up background at the same point, So this guy's from, I think he grew up in Fort Bragg, North Carolina. Now he's in the Memphis, Tennessee area and stuff like that. So, and I love Memphis. My wife brought me to Memphis, and we got to talking about that. Yeah, it's cool. So
Find the bright side. That's all you can do
yeah,
some
there you
days.
go. That's where I find the silver lining in every little shitty hole that you find yourself in, and try to keep positive. Positivity is the big thing. Be professional and be positive. There, if you can get any of my final last words from Danger Dave, that's where it is. Be
There you
positive and
go.
be professional. So
Appreciate you, brother. Thanks for jumping on. Good to talk to you, and we'll catch up with you soon.
hey, I gotta go. I gotta grill some shrimp tonight. I got the family starving upstairs. So
All right, buddy. Man,
all right,
appreciate you.
see you, man.
Bye.
We're talking trucking life, uncut. The wild stuff, the weird stuff, the mistakes, the memories, and the miles in between. From first jobs to last hauls, the laughs that kept us going, and the lessons that left a mark.
Quick reminder to pay a visit to our friends of the show on social media. Big Cal's Truck and Kitchen. Big Cal's been bragging about all the great food he's got in his rig this week. He hung out with his buddy, Thomas Chu. Thomas's page is Grilling 18 Wheelers. They were doing some food prep, and the food looks amazing. Keep them doors locked, Cal. I know what your rig looks like. You get my neighborhood, and I might grab a couple Tupperware containers off you. Also, Chris Barber, he's been making a bunch of posts, hanging out with his dogs up in Canada, moving some farm machinery around. 'Tis the season for moving equipment around up those big farms up in Canada. July 21st is his next big court date here. Say a prayer or well wish for the outcome there for Chris. Superior Trucking Payroll Service, be sure to check them out. Mike's down in Houston this last weekend at the Texas Truck Show. We'll catch up with him here again soon. And in the meantime, check out his site, his Facebook page, his YouTube videos. He's got a lot of funny content out there, not just stuff he does on our show, but it's other content as well, or on his website, truckingpayroll.com. And of course, our friend Al over at I-95 Truckers. Al is going to be out on the 95 south of Richmond this week. Looks like he's heading out there Tuesday morning before noon. So hopefully I'll get this episode out here Monday night or early Tuesday morning. So if you're heading down 95 on Tuesday morning, you might want to check out Al's page, see if he got Facebook famous. I was trying to get the episode out Monday like usual, but I got everything all written up, my notes ready to rip off the podcast. And then after my flight to OKC, I don't know if I caught a bug or something, but my throat started ripping and I couldn't do it. I couldn't talk comfortably. And I'm doing it here on Monday, recording it. My throat's a little bit better. I think I got a little more sand and gravel to my voice. Maybe I sound a little bit more like an old schooler since I'm telling old time trucking stories today. Sound like I've been around a little while longer and not like a 17-year-old kid. Just got through puberty most days. So make sure to check out Al's Facebook page if you're rolling southbound 95 south of Richmond. The summer show season still in full swing. Make sure to check out the website, thetruckshowlist.com, Walcott Truckers Jamboree coming up here in a few weeks. We've got the Coonley Races, Quebec-style uphill drag races in September over in Ohio, just east of Cleveland, I think is where they're located. We've got the Louisiana Trucking Show coming up in October, as well as the California Truck Show in October over in Ontario. That one's by the same people who did the Texas Truck Show this past week. So that one's more of an indoor show. Louisiana Truck Show looks like a really cool one too, coming up later in October. Be sure to keep reaching out if you'd like to be on the program. Like, follow, comment, subscribe, leave us a review, email us at inbox@channel19experience.com. There's also a contact form on the website. Keep sharing the podcast with your friends. Thank you for listening. We'll see you all next week. We've got work to do.
This has been the Channel 19 Experience. If it's about trucking, we're talking about it. All uncut. The wild stuff, the weird stuff, the mistakes, the memories. But we talk about the world of trucking today, too. Everything from legislation to lane changes in the industry. We got it covered. Thanks for listening to the show. If you enjoyed it, make sure to like, rate, and review. We'll be back at the ranch soon, but in the meantime, hit us up on social media at Channel 19 Experience and the website at www.channel19experience.com. That's channel and the numbers 19. See you down the road.